Hello, everybody. Loving that music. Our guest picked that today. Welcome to another terrific edition of Deborah Kobylt Live. We're going to get right to it with our guest who's calling in from New York, Steve Kardian. Steve, thanks for being with us.
My pleasure. You're coming in a little broken up, by the way.
I'm broken up?
It's because of the music.
It's because of the music? Is that a little better? Can you hear me now? Is that better?
Sounds better.
Oh, okay, perfect. Steve is the author of The New Superpower for Women. Trust your intuition. I like that. I always trust my intuition. Predict dangerous situations and defend yourself from the unthinkable. A little bit about Steve. He's a 30-year veteran of law enforcement. He's been an FBI defense tactics instructor. Did I say that right? FBI defense tactical instructor. Yeah?
Good enough for me, yeah.
Good enough for you. Thank you. Among other things. But what I wanted to know is what motivated you to write this book. I think this is terrific. I did read it cover to cover. You were asking me if I read it. I read all of it. But I wanted to know why you decided to write this. It's a great book. It's a Bible, in my opinion, for women especially, especially coming from a guy who's a law enforcement person. You've seen it all. So how to?
Well, you know, in the same fashion, I've been teaching self-defense, defensive tactics to law enforcement, the general public, and women for about 25 or so years. So I have an extensive program through Defend University that I teach, where I create instructors all across the country and around the world that take my program, my anti-sexual assault, anti-domestic violence, anti-kidnapping, anti-date rape drugs program back to their respective communities. I mean, just not many months ago, I had a woman travel from Kenya. 6 months ago, a woman from Australia. Before that, a woman came from Japan. So Ireland, England, Spain, Malaysia. We have instructors all over the place, and they come to me to take a 2-day initial intensive certification, and they bring that back to their respective communities. Now, I've always recognized the program started out as a self-defense only program, women specific, where women are actually put in positions, God forbid, if they found themselves being sexually assaulted, kidnapped, violated in some way, shape, or form. But we recognize that self-defense is the last resort. So everything that happens before that, the safety aspect, doing things that will prevent a crime from actually happening. Because once you have to resort to self-defense, everything is broken down. The good gift of intuition, your decision-making may have been manipulated, compromised, or skewed in some way. So it's for, as the experts that have read it before the book came out, they titled it an encyclopedia of safety.
But, other than the obvious, okay, try not to wear super short shorts as you're walking down a place that looks sort of seedy. I mean, that's kind of the obvious thing. But what's the real stuff that you teach women so that they end up in the first place not to be a victim? Women in particular. So let's start with women, young girls, all women.
Well, the first thing I want to do is we all have intuition. We all have that gift. And some of us it's readily at our hands. We rely on it. We live it often. I was explaining that I had my first experience at 17 years of age. So I want to put them in touch with their gift of intuition. Well, I did something with Inside Edition with the investigative unit where I went on to a campus, and my job was to try and lure myself into young girls' cars, and 8 young girls leaving the campus. They all let me in their car. They all drove away with me until I identified myself. And this was with the undercover investigative unit.
That is unbelievable. What were you offering them? $1 million? I mean, I might have opened the door too. But what were you doing? How did you get in their cars?
I was selecting the soft target.
Yeah. So what's a soft target?
Well, I was looking for the women, the young girls that were walking out and that were on their cell phone, that were texting, that were eating their lunch, that were looking at their notes, that came out and just said, whoa, it's a beautiful day, I'm out of here. They were more so not paying attention or oblivious to their surroundings. Now, the women that walked out and maybe just scanned the parking lot even quickly, maybe they saw me, maybe they didn't, those were the ladies, the women that I let go because I knew that they would be a much more difficult target.
Okay, so hang on. So what did you do? They're looking at their phones, they're getting in the car, they're eating the turkey sandwich, and then what are you doing? Knocking on the window and saying hello?
No, as they drove up, I flagged them down.
I wouldn't let you in, but okay, go ahead.
I flagged them down. I say, listen, my sister's up at the dorms here. She's sick. I need help. Can you drop me off at the security? Or I tell them that my car broke down. I use several different ruses.
They would buy that stuff?
I'm sorry?
They buy that stuff? I mean, I don't know. I was taught it two not to do that sort of a thing. But I am from New Jersey, so people really buy that stuff, huh? I can't believe it. My puppy's dying. I mean, and they'll open the door for you.
Well, you prey upon, their sensitive, selves. You already have the soft target, and I never allowed them to really digest what was going on. They knew something was wrong, but I never gave them the opportunity to really, absorb what exactly was going on, what exactly they were doing. See, they weren't prepared. If they had thought about something like that happening to them, even remotely close to this, they'd have had a plan. They'd have known, well, hey, you know what? I'll tell security. Or, hey, you know what? I'll flag down, one of the security officers, or I'll report it to the student affairs office. Something like that, where you put them off. You're going to help them, but you're putting them off so they don't have to have contact.
So rule number one, if a guy is knocking at your window, even if you think he's a little cute and you're buying his story, just say, hold on, I'm pulling out of here, and I'll tell security, or I'll dial 911 for you, okay? And I'm out of here. So in other words, never open the door, never roll down the window, especially even an inch or two, right? Because can a guy get his hand in there and it's over, right?
He can. And, I did the same ruse with NBC. They brought me to a shopping center at Christmas time. I got 8 women out of 8 women to walk from the front of the store all the way to the back parking lot where nobody else was except the camera crew. And they all had that same. But, the interesting thing is that they all knew they shouldn't have done it. They all had that feeling, this is not something I'm going to do, but they allowed themselves to override that and put that aside and go about and allow me in their car.
So that's number one. Don't do it no matter what, even if the guy is crying murder, or someone's hit his mom. Just don't open the door. Don't roll down the window. What's number two? So that's awareness. That's not making yourself a target. What else do you tell somebody? Now, what if they did make themselves a target? Now what do they do?
Well, if they do make themselves a target, 50% of the time, if you even indicate to a predator that you're a hard target, he's going to go elsewhere. And then employing awareness, situational awareness. If you're aware of your surroundings and say you spot somebody that's maybe spying you for some sort of criminal activity, he's trying to target you, and it takes less than 7 seconds for him to actually pick out a soft target. When you do a little target glance where you may look in his direction, just enough to let him know, hey, I've seen you. If you're up to no good, I know it, and I ain't going to be easy.
Hey, you also talk about cyber stalking. I got to tell you, just today, I had 2 or 3 incredibly creepy people try and wave me on Facebook Messenger. And then one of them even changed my name. I think you can have a pet name for somebody. So they changed my last name to his last name. And I'm like, ooh, creepy. So what do you do with stuff like that? I instantly blocked the guy, but I'm thinking, how else is he going to find me? What do you do about that?
Well, you're out there. You're in celebrity world, and it's hard. Who's the young lady that just went on vacation, posted her pictures on Instagram, and her house got broken into in L.A.? Katie, one of the famous singers. I spoke about that recently. But the more presence you have online, the more danger you are in for anything from identity theft to catfishing to somebody assuming your identity. There's so many things that could go wrong.
But
the internet is the. Go ahead.
Well, let me just say something. I immediately blocked him, but I was angry, and what I wanted to do was write to him and say, leave me alone. But I thought, no, I can't engage. So just from my own experience, I'm going to say, don't engage, right? Because I wanted to.
Yeah, he wants you to.
I know
he'd rather
does.
have negative contact with you than no contact.
Yeah, I had to pull myself back from writing to him and saying, leave me the hell alone. But I didn't. I just blocked him. So, of course, now he's probably watching and going, I'm going to find her another way. But and there were two today, and I'm thinking, why today of all days? But don't engage, right? I mean, I should be somebody who's in your book because I'm sitting here going through all this myself, right?
Yeah, the internet's a dangerous place. Two-factor authentication. Make sure that you have your real life self where you interact with your family and your close friends, and then your public self. Have an avatar that represents something other than really who you are. Use a different email. Maybe even use a different computer. Every app that you have on your phone, let's say, for example, on your mobile device, you can be tracked. You go into a restaurant and it pops up, hey, Steve, you're at, whatever restaurant, would you like to rate us? I mean, you're being tracked all over by Twitter, by Facebook, by just about every single app that's out there.
Okay,
they know where you are.
For that, should you leave, for example, your location off? Because that's what I do too.
Well, you can go in and depending upon which phone you have, either, an iPhone or an Android, you can go in and you can disable, for example, Google. There was just a show on it on I think GMA that you can go in and disable those. If you turn off your location, if you want ultimate concealment, and it's not even ultimate concealment, turn off your location in your settings, and that will be the best way you can do it. You have to go into each and every device and shut off, including going into your phone camera and turning off the location, because you'll be sending out geotags and they'll be able to track you through GPS.
Yeah, that's what I try to do. I feel like nobody really needs to get in touch with me or know where I am. And if they need me, if they're that close, they'll find me. They'll text me. So what about this 7-second rule that you talk about? It's one of the chapters in your book.
Yeah, that was based on the Greystone-Stein study back in the early 80s. And they videotaped people walking on a New York City Manhattan street. And they took the footage over a period of time, and they took it to a high-security, maximum-security prison. And they showed it to the prisoners. And independent of one another, they all selected what we refer to as the soft targets. And that didn't, they allowed petite women, petite men, older senior citizens walk by without selecting them. They were looking for something specific. And, people will tell you, walk with a purpose, have your game face on, chest forward, shoulders back. But in the book, we give you illustrations, because everybody talks about it, nobody shows you. We give you illustrations to show you what the wrong way is and what the right way is.
Yeah, I thought that was valuable.
My program, I'm sorry?
That was very valuable. It's true. People don't realize when they're walking around the message that they're sending out. I mean, it's simple as that, but it's so important.
It is. It is, and if there are some women that have a tough time, playing that role because of their personality, maybe the way they're brought up. So I have them in their mirror practice. I have them have a friend or a family member videotape them walking down a street to show them, so they can observe and say, hey, maybe I could have my posture a little bit better. Maybe my gait could be a little stronger. Have you ever been somewhere, and because I'm in law enforcement and I train a lot of military and law enforcement, I see these guys, and when a guy walks in the room and he is one tough guy, you just know it. I mean, we used to work with the Special Forces, the SEALs, the Army Rangers when I was at the Gracie Academy, right actually in your neck of the woods in Torrance, California. And you knew those guys. You knew that they were about something. So you want to replicate that. You want to look at somebody that you think is a hard target, and you want to try and mimic what they're doing.
It's a little harder for a woman, because I know a lot of those guys too, and they're tough and they're big, and you're not going to go mess with them. But it's true, if a woman walks in, I mean, there's no doubt she's probably more vulnerable, most women anyway. Getting self-defense classes, I think, is so important. I mean, you talk about the university that you run, Defend University. It's a 2-day program, right? But people can find self-defense courses anywhere in their community, even at the local Y. Even just the basics, right? I think is so empowering for women. We got to know this stuff.
Well, it's all good. You want to find a reality-based program. The dynamic, for example, for women, crimes against men and crimes against women differ. You take the crime of robbery. If a man wants to rob a man, he wants his money, he wants his life, or both. A man robs a woman, he wants her money, her life, and she's got the great risk of sexual assault being perpetrated. How many crimes I've investigated that has happened? How many crimes I've reviewed and studied? So it's a little bit different. Your regular karate class, your punch and stun and run programs, they don't work well in the real world, because, and I've had high-level martial art women sexually assaulted, investigations that I've done, and women have come through my program that have been raped by their non-martial art boyfriends or acquaintances, and they were crushed. They were crushed in the, at some point in the investigation you discuss it, but at some point they tell me that in a nanosecond it went through their head that this is what I learned in class, and that none of my stuff is working, and it breaks them down mentally.
Why? Because I have people here in the studio and they're shaking their heads like agreeing with you because they know this stuff. Why? So then what should people be doing? If that's not going to work, then what's a woman to do?
The dynamic of a sexual assault is you're going to be grabbed and taken somewhere, and it's a kidnapping as well, grabbed and taken somewhere, or grabbed and brought down to the ground. Not knowing how to deal with that range. For example, when we created our program, we said, what happened to you, and let's fix it. So we using these women as this that voluntary experimental process, broke down their attacks and created a response for them. Now, if you look at the fight, flight, freeze, and we have, say, at 115 beats per minute, your fine motor skills break down. That's you dialing a phone. I have had women, their children were having grand mal seizures. They couldn't even dial 911. That's you using a key to unlock your house door or your car door. Then upwards of 115 beats per minute to 145 when something not good is happening to you. Your complex motor skills break down. That's usually combining 2, 3, 4 techniques. That's the majority of your traditional karate programs. And they break down at that rate. They look great in the dojo when it's a calm environment and you're working with a willing participant. But in the real life, they're difficult. Now, if you look at between 145 and 175, the gross motor skills, which are all the techniques that we employ, thrive in that environment, using your bigger, stronger, more powerful, large group muscles against a man's more vulnerable points. So by putting them in the position that they would find themselves in, they can control their adrenal process way better.
So specifically, they what? I mean, I know you were just describing it, but when you're in that situation and you're in a panic situation, basically what's the number 1, 2, and 3 thing you've got to do, or else?
Fight.
Yeah.
Flight. Or you may freeze. You've got to make a decision. I mean, certainly, if you can run, there's no. See, I'm not talking about when I tell these women. I say you might kick the guy's butt. That's not your objective. Your objective is to change his behavior enough so you can escape. You may kick his butt in the meantime, but you want to hurt him enough so you can escape. And our mission is to make every woman better on the first minute, first day, first week, first month than she was on the last day, month, than she was on the minute that she walked in. And we've never failed at. Everybody has a different threshold. You
talk quite a bit about going to parties, about getting groped. What do you have to say about that? If you can sort of encapsulate a little bit of what you've got in the book about that.
It's funny. I last Friday I did a segment again with Inside Edition on subway groping based on the Taylor Swift case, and Inside Edition surveyed, I think it was 100 or 200 women, and 33% or about a third of them said that they've been groped on the subway.
It has happened to me so many times on a subway. What should I have done? I just moved aside. I didn't even want to touch the guy. I didn't want to look at him. I didn't want to nudge him. I just pushed myself aside, and I didn't really care. I just wanted to get out of there. Do you?
Yeah, and that for some women that's okay. For other women, that kind of guy, he's a sleazy, different kind of predator. He's the kind of guy that you call him out, he's going to slither from where he came back from. But often it happens when you're getting on a train. It happens when you're getting off the train. It happens when you're walking by the person. So it's a really sleazy kind of crime.
They're so gross. What are they getting out of, like a quick grope of your ass? I don't really get it. So they're just really getting off on doing that kind of a thing.
Sure.
They get their willies out of doing that.
It'll be more. It'll
on
be
the A train. I mean. Well, go ahead. I'm sorry. You can see I'm from New York, and I let it go. But I'm thinking, for God's sakes, I mean, go ahead. Go ahead.
It shouldn't be. That's the kind of guy where you can yell, "Did you just grope me? Don't touch me. Back off." And you know what? People are going to start taking out their cell phone cameras. So
there you go.
Again, that's not the kind of guy that's really going to, majority-wise, that's not the kind of guy that's going to give you a hard time.
I guess so. Sometimes I'm afraid if I speak up, then maybe he'll follow me, or I don't know. That's why I don't say anything, and I just move to the side. There's something to be said for that, too. Just be quiet and move away. Yeah, I got somebody in my studio saying no.
There's
Okay.
no definitive answer. You're right. Your most comfortable decision is the right decision.
No, but I mean like in a public situation like a subway. You know what I mean? Why am I going to start yelling in the subway? All right, but we'll move on from there. But I want to talk a little bit briefly, because we could go on for this one forever, about why you got into this, how you even felt that you needed to help people. I think you were 17 years of age. I even did a piece on you on Inside Edition about this, how you helped a kid at the beach because intuitively you felt like there was something wrong. Could you real briefly walk us through that?
Yeah, I'll give you the short version. I was walking on a beach when I was 17 with my girlfriend. We were going to an area about 15 minutes away. I had this overwhelming feeling to go back. Didn't know why. Intuition is knowing something without knowing why. I convinced my girlfriend to go back. We got 200 yards from our beach house, and I saw a woman jump out of her chair, go over to a pile of sand, and scream bloody murder. I run over there, 2 little feet sticking out. An 8-year-old boy had created a huge pile, dug into it. It collapsed on him. I dug him out. He wasn't breathing. Basically, I held him up to a group of 20 people who had now gathered, and I said, I was begging, does anybody know CPR? Does anybody know mouth-to-mouth? They all just stared at me. You know, looking at a guy looked like a young Tom Selleck guy. I said, sir, please, do you know? Everybody just looked at me. Well, I had read about it in a pamphlet a month earlier from my recreation department. They sent a pamphlet about rescue breathing, and I just began performing what I read. I was really into it. I read it vividly, and he eventually began to breathe again. And he's still unconscious. The police came. They took him away, and 2 hours later, they knock on the door. I thought the kid was dead, and they knock on the door and they tell me, like, they said, listen, we just want to shake your hand. If you hadn't done what you did when you did it, the kid would have been dead. So it hit the Associated Press. It was all over. And my wife did all these articles. 20 years later, I start trying to find if this kid is, a drug addict. Is he in jail? Has he made something of himself? And I was really bothered by the fact that that was delegated to a 17-year-old kid. So 3 things. That was my first incident with the gift of intuition, my first incident with the blueprint, creating a plan of action, and that you can never rely on anybody coming to your aid. So
Very smart.
Eventually,
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Very smart. Very smart. You're right. That really made
lucky
imprint
too.
in your head. Yeah. Go ahead.
And then, I was doing a seminar. I included him in the book. I included that story in the book. In March, I'm in Las Cruces, New Mexico, doing a seminar. And we'll make it a long story short. Somebody in that room knew him because I told the story, using the intuition and the like. And we were reunited on the beach that I saved him on. Back about 4 weeks ago by Inside Edition. Yeah, it was great to meet the guy. A brilliant man, incredible story, was a high-level government employee, worked for the DOD, and, created all sorts of stuff, had a very super duper high clearance level. And that's why I couldn't find him on the internet.
But that also really started your career into wanting to help people and then getting into law enforcement because you realize that this is important stuff and you need, it just puts you into action for the path that you were destined to have in your own life. It's very impressive. So what are you doing now? What do? You're right. You wrote this book, which is terrific. And like I said, to me, it's like a Bible. Every woman needs to get this because it's common sense, it's smart, and it's from a law enforcement officer. What are you doing in your free time?
I have no free time. I'm retired from law enforcement. I just finished up with the Marshals, U.S. Marshals, and I wrote the book, and I travel the country, and I create instructors for my Defend University program, the Girls on Guard Guarding Our Girls. I have hundreds and hundreds of instructors that I make a year. I do it for. I was just in San Diego at the Marine Corps Depot, the Miramar Air Base, and recently at the in Las Vegas, the Air Force Base there. I have high school teachers, college professors, doctors, lawyers, moms, everybody and anybody that wants to empower their young with this information that will keep them safe. So I'm mostly doing that, and I do a lot of media, a lot of safety media. I'm Inside Edition safety expert, so they're bringing me in at least once a week or twice a week.
So someone wants to take this course, and they can't get to you. What do they do?
Well, the beauty. Well, first of all, the most important thing that I can do, if I had an hour with a group of women, I would empower them with knowledge and information that they didn't have, which is contained in the book. Mm-hmm. So I would start by reading the book. It is, in essence, a guide to safety, an encyclopedia to safety. So that's why I wrote it, because I found I was generating so much of my time teaching my instructors all of this information. And, it's the most important thing. Self-defense is the last resort. Everything in that book is what you should be doing to keep yourself and your loved ones safe.
But is there a place that they can go? Let's say they really want to have an intensive with you and the people that you're training to actually learn some self-defense from you in particular. How do they do that? How do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, if they go to defenduniversity.com, there is a list of instructors. I haven't been able to update it in probably the past 6 months working on the book, but there's probably another 50 or 60 that we've made in that time period. And they can see we have instructors in just about every state across the nation.
Okay, that's really important. So defenduniversity.com. Thank you so much for being with us, Steve Kardian, the new superpower for women. Everybody, you need to pick this up. And Steve, I'm going to be in New York next week. Maybe we'll look you up. How about that if you're going to be in the city?
Yeah, let me know. We'll meet for coffee. That would be great.
That would be a lot of fun. Meet for coffee. So I'll look you up. And thanks again for taking the time to come on.
Thanks, Deborah. Be well.
Bye-bye.
And be safe. Bye-bye.
That was a great one. This is really important stuff. I think everybody needs to know it. Sometimes I'll freeze myself. I'll be in a situation. But I have been in that situation, Tony, many times on a subway. I can't even begin to count how many times. And I will. I'll just move away because...
And sorry I grew up so
that's why I didn't say anything. It wasn't so bad. No, but seriously, on a subway situation, unless he's really attacking me, I just want to move aside. I just don't want to create a big scene. It doesn't mean anyone else should do that, because I have somebody on my right saying, don't do that. So read the book, because he's the guy who will tell you the way to handle something like that. The new superpower for women. Everybody, thanks for being here. We'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.